This week in PlayStation Rumble, we wallow in the eternal darkness of revenge by shooting every streetlight and IKEA lamp within a 5-mile radius as we play PS3's The Darkness. Hello, my name is Jamie, and joining me is a man, and that man is Tony.
Wow, you didn't rhyme this week. That's
There were no rhymes this week.
Very disappointing. I was looking forward to it.
Look, there is a reason there is no rhyme, but I will.
It's been a very long hiatus, and I was looking forward to hearing one of Jamie's rhymes.
You know what? I still have rhymes, but no rhymes this week. But there is housekeeping. Some of the more eager-eared listeners may have noticed that Neil is absent from this episode and will no longer be hosting the podcast going forward. But fear not, listeners, as we are going to be joined by a new host in March. Our episode in March is going to be on Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, the PS2 classic, getting a remaster this year. Fingers crossed, maybe. I don't know. So hopefully from March onwards, we'll be able to record more consistently and knock out 2 games a month.
Even though in our last episode, we said we were going to do something else, but we're not doing it anymore. It was a failed experiment, folks. We're going back to a regular routine.
Look, we are a book club format, and that is what people in their tens are coming here to listen to. So we're going to stay true to our hearts and just do game episodes, but hopefully on a more consistent basis moving forward. But until then, you're stuck with me and T, and this week we have played The Darkness. Tony, The Darkness was very much your choice. Yes. We'll have words about that. But why did you want to play The Darkness? Why have you brought this to our doors today?
I just felt that it was a game that those who played it have fond memories of it, if not for one reason or another. And it gets talked about, but not enough, I think. It's a very early PS3 game, but it was very ambitious, I feel, for the time. It has its flaws, but I feel like overall it did a lot of interesting things, and I just figured, let more people hear about it because there was no PC port for the first game and it hasn't received a re-release or remake or even another sequel after this for Darkness 3, which I'll probably end up touching about since I also played the Darkness 2. It's just worth talking about. More people should know about it.
I think you're definitely right on 2 counts. It is, it does try to do interesting things and it does have flaws. And we'll be talking about both of those things in droves. The Darkness is made by Starbreeze, which is a Swedish developer. In 2007, you might know them because they made the Chronicles of Riddick. I think one of them, The Escape from the Butcher's Bay. They worked on Payday 2, and they worked on, which surprised me, A Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. I always thought that game was made by Hazelight, the company that made A Way Out and more recently It Takes Two. But it kind of was. It was made by Joseph Farah. It was made by the Hazelight team, but before they were the Hazelight team, when they were still working in Starbreeze. And then they broke off from Starbreeze to make their own company and are enjoying a huge amount of success with that now. But this game came out in 2007.
Yeah, I think in the summer, right? June and July or something like that, mid-year.
Yeah, so when's the PS3 come? The PS3 comes out in 2006.
Yeah, it came out late 2006, I think December, November.
So this is a really early...
It's a year one PS3 game.
And I think the PS3 was so notoriously difficult for developers to wrap their mind around. It took 3 or 4 years before we were seeing developers use the engine properly.
Up to a certain point, a lot of the PS3 ports were very rough compared to the 360 versions of the game.
And maybe even, I would argue, rough compared to some games at the time. So 2007, what came out? Bioshock, Assassin's Creed, Super Mario Galaxy, Mass Effect, Uncharted, Drake's Deception, Uncharted, Jake's Fortune, yeah, a lot of big games. Half-Life 2. I mean, how does it rack up to them? We're going to have to sort of see.
I mean, Bioshock didn't come out. It came out for the 360. It then came out for the PS3 like a year later. Because I remember my buddy had a PS3. He brought it to my friend's house, or a friend's house, and we played Bioshock because it wasn't available on the PS3. I think, I want to say the next year was when it finally got ported over.
Not a huge year for gaming, but certainly some notable titles to compare this to. And oh boy, are we going to compare it. Starbreeze got the rights in March in 2006 and released the game in June 2007. So that's a tight development cycle, isn't it? Even for back then, that's like a year and some change.
A tight development cycle on a new generation of consoles. The first year especially can be a bit rough around the edges.
Yes. And this game's definitely got that going on for it. It was adapted from a comic book titled The Darkness. I'm not familiar with the original source. I
didn't know it was a comic until I actually played the game, and you get some collectibles, and they are of the first few issues of the Darkness.
Yes, I was actually surprised to see when I finished the game that you have full comics from the menu screen that you can dive into. I think there were a series of special comics made in junction with this game as well. I think like a 6-part series of The Darkness that was for this game.
I didn't know that.
And it generally, to my shock and amazement, got quite a good reception overall. Even though people did cite things like weak physics and AI, and did fairly well. It sold, I think, over 1 million copies. So, not too shabby. Would you like to guess what the Metacritic for this game is, Tony?
I think it's like high 70s, low 80s.
Yeah, that is bang on. It is 80 for PS3 on Metacritic. I'm going to read 2 reviews out now. I usually like to pick the top and the bottom review, but the top reviews like asinine. So I'm going to pick the second top review, which is Play UK, which is a UK magazine that I got with growing up. And they gave it a 91. And they said that The Darkness combines the best bits of mafia and war films, producing one complete, intriguing experience. Few licensed games go beyond the realms of their source material, but The Darkness does it in a funny, gritty, and engaging way. So, Play UK, thumbs up. What do you think the lowest ranking review for this is?
Probably like a 50.
Guess who gave this review? A little ghost that's come back recently from the past, G4 TV. I don't know if you ever watched G4 TV, Tony.
I remember G4.
And they've just come back now. I think like The Completionist is on it and some other people. But back in 2007, they said about the game, and this is more mirroring my thoughts on the game. I was looking forward to it, but left very disappointed. It's completely playable. Being about 7 hours long helps, but I spent the entire game waiting for it to be good, to make sense, to make a case for all the incongruous elements of the design, gameplay, and story, and then it ended. In broad strokes, how did you find this game? Did you enjoy playing it? Did you cry at night thinking you had to slog through another hour of it? How did you... No, I'm not biased. I'm just saying, how did you find the game?
I remember when I first got it, I think it was several years after the game was released. I want to say like a year or two. Long enough to where it was, I picked it up during like one of those old GameStop sales. It was like buy 5 for $20 or some shit like that. Like, that's how I got it. And then I remember I was kind of off-putting at first because it moved very slow in a sense that I'm not used to in an FPS. And I had a hard time getting into it up until a certain point, which we'll get to.
I mean, literally, like, the walking pace is actually slow in this game. Yeah. Particularly when you have to go through the streets to, like, find your next destination. I'm strolling like a granny getting Sunday shopping. Like, there are, like, turtles, like, passing me on the fast lane. Like, there's no run button in this game. I just cannot... that is one thing that I think this game, like, really faltered on.
You might be right. I don't remember running. I'm always used to running.
That's
being
because
R3.
You didn't. You just sort of bopped along. Like, you're going for a countryside walk.
I don't remember being that slow, though. I just remember it's not... The pacing was slower than to say something like, at the time, like Doom 3 or every other FPS at the time, which was basically every FPS running gunner, at least at the time.
I think in that way, like, I kind of enjoyed it because it's not trying to be like a Twitch reaction first-person shooter. There are like sometimes different ways to skin the cat. You can use your darklings, you can use your like powers to sort of clear a room in like loads of different ways. So I wasn't like upset that it wasn't like a mile a minute.
The actual darkness things that are on you, wherever they're called, I don't remember what they're called, but
the darkness.
The darkness actually takes up like a quarter of the screen, it feels like, and that was kind of distracting at first, but I remember I had to go back to it back in the day, like 07, 08, whenever I first played it. I went back to like the game like twice to finally be able to get into it. And then I really enjoyed it after that, like, and then when I replayed it, I have my feelings about it, but I still think
which are valid.
I still really enjoyed it. Like, I had a good time. I think I beat it within a few days. Like, I just came back to it every couple of hours a night, and I know.
I think the tentacles thing, when you first suggested that we play this game, I am notoriously known for not surrounding myself in scary games or horror games.
He's a bit of a scaredy cat, and, we were kind of worried that...
yeah, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat. I'm just saying, I saw the YouTube trailer for it, and I didn't realize that those massive things, like tentacles, basically are big dark tentacles. Spoiler warning, just at the top, we're going to like spoil all of this game. Although, to be honest, I think the developers did a good enough job of that as it is. No, I'm being harsh, Tony. Tony's gonna next time I'm gonna be announcing that Tony is no longer hosting the PlayStation Rumble podcast. But yeah, I just thought these things were stuff you're going to have to fight and they look way too intense, but they're actually like arcing out of you, like that sort of, like sort of arms, like sort of tentacles, like coming around into your field of vision. I think what really helps, not make that overbearing is that apart from that, your HUD is completely clean. There is no mini map. There is no health meter, and everything that you can, all the information, it's kind of got that Dead Space thing going on. All the information you need is on those two sort of fighting main tentacles that kind of have faces. So your darkness level, you have a darkness level in the game, and that dictates what sort of darkness powers you can do. That goes from 1 to 5, and as that goes up, the weird tentacle creatures get more eyes. So your eyes can go from 1 to 5, and that indicates your...
I didn't even notice
Tony's
that.
looking at me going... Oh!
I didn't even notice that. I just kind of... went with it.
Just like the eyes. Also, like you have a darkness level in the game. So this is the main mechanic, which we'll get into in a second. But as you need the darkness level to keep good health and keep powers. And as your darkness level drains, as does the sort of tattoo drain on each tentacle in the darkness, so you can actually have a sort of visual representation of how much level of darkness you have without it breaking like the cinematic experience of the game, and also like which power you're using is indicated by which glowing color is on the tentacles. So all that information is there, and I thought that was quite good game design, particularly for 27. I'm going to say I started off really not being a fan of this game, and by the end I came to it feeling like there were like definitely some redeeming features in it and some things I enjoyed. But let's first briefly like outline what this sort of game is.
The Darkness is it's a first-person story-driven game. It's linear, but there's still, you go through subway systems and everything. There's a small bit of exploration. You can do small side quests, very simple side quests to help build world build and everything. But yeah, it's basically a first-person shooter with revenge. Big part of it is just revenge of stuff that happens throughout the game that we will talk about.
I mean, you've talked about that with as much enthusiasm as I feel it deserves, because I mean, this plot is like whack.
The plot is fucking wild. Like, where do you want to start with the plot?
Yeah, I think firstly,
the fucking plot is wild. I remember I thought I had a grasp. I remember like the first major key storyline that happens. And that's why I was like, oh shit, I remember that being really memorable. I remember, it was it hit hard, fucking like a ton of bricks, and that's what really got me into it. What I didn't remember what happened after that was it gets wild, man.
what threw me off this game most was the story. I mean, I think the writing is like so subpar. It is like trying to have like a bit of a GTA sort of violent charm to it. It feels like it's trying to be a bit Sopranos-y at some time, but I just think like the credit in the bank is just not there. Like they are just they're not really satiring or homaging. They're just like really sort of, I feel like, copy and pasting. Like for a lot of it, like
I think it follows the comic book very well. I think very closely. I don't want to say it does or doesn't because I never read it. And even the comic came out in like the mid '90s, so it was already kind of its own thing.
At the front of this game, after you get through about like 5 logos from different companies smacking you in the face before the menu screen.
That was every game. That's like every game. So it's like, yeah.
Tony's got to defend this one.
It never gets old.
It is like egregious in this. You start off with a character talking in like a dark atmosphere, and he's called, it's a dark atmosphere. Of course it is. I just get that. Jackie is like a young, up and coming, like talented gang member in the mafia.
Yeah, it's mafia basically. I guess his uncle runs. He's part of his family. His uncle runs. I think his father had died, and his uncle's running the family. It's a whole story. It's a whole convoluted. I want to say convoluted, but.
And he's going, my life. You know, I can't remember what he says, but you know, something like my life got really interesting. You know, it was my 21st birthday, and this is the first time I died. And then it cuts to you in a car with 2 mafia goons. And I just think the first impression of this story was really bad. Like they are like horrible characters. It feels like really cheesy voice acting. I think they got some big wigs in for this game. They got in they got in people from Oz and 6 Feet Under.
Yeah, Kirk Espinato, I think his name is, and he was in Fringe. He was in the 12 Monkey series. If you've never watched it, it's fantastic. He was in a bunch of things, and she was in 6 Feet Under. And she's on some Apple TV show now, some weird ass, I think The Servant, which is some weird ass show, and it's on fucking Apple TV.
But honestly, the writing, I think, in this game is so bad that they all came like out as like amateur like voiceover. I thought
all the main characters did fine. You know, some of the secondary characters, yeah, because that just kind of happens, especially then. But I thought they were the main leads were all pretty good.
I really didn't like. I mean, I wasn't going for Jackie's dialogue, but I think maybe something could be said for they're just trying to like breathe some life into this like dead piece of wood.
My problem with Jackie's voice was, the voice actor's like in his 30s playing a 21-year-old, which just didn't fit. I felt that's the only thing that was really off. In the sequel they fixed that. It sounds they changed the voice actors between games because it came out like 7 years later, so. The new voice actor, it's a different voice actor. It fits more, I felt. But I thought everyone, or at least the main cast, did pretty well.
Like, the main premise of this game is that you've been set up. Your Uncle Paulie is trying to kill you on your 21st birthday. You kind of get away, and then he kills your girlfriend in front of you. And then do you die? You kind of die. Yeah, you do die.
In the beginning, I think there was a deal that went wrong, and that's what I think that led to the car chase, and then something happened, and then to get his uncle angry at him, and then whatever. So there was kind of like a betrayal or something, and then the uncle goes out. Like Jackie's trying to take the uncle down, but then uncle goes after his girlfriend and kills him. And like when a major plot point was, he's going to this orphanage they grew up in. After I think Jackie's father died, and so he goes to his orphanage for a little while before his uncle takes him in, and he meets the girl Jenny. So they're like childhood friends that got together when they grew up. They set it all up too, and they have a very close relationship and everything. And then there was like a kind of just both trying to take each other out, and then then all of a sudden, as a retaliation, I think what was the name of his uncle? I think I want to say Frankie, but I'm probably wrong. Oh, it's Paulie. His uncle Paulie retaliates and then kidnaps his girlfriend. And when you go save his girlfriend, try to go save your girlfriend, Jenny,
from the block.
Your darkness is holding you back as, your uncle puts a bullet in her skull right in front of you. So
And all this time, you kind of have this darkness thing calling out to you. Like it starts as voices in your head, but then you kind of like break out and get these powers that are coming.
The darkness like intentionally holds you back from saving your girlfriend, and then she dies, and then the game just goes off the fucking rails.
So the whole game is you who are like kind of dead, kind of not, using these darkness powers, which is like a force that's trying to kind of overtake your body and make you into this sort of hateful, angry thing. But and it's also kind of keeping you alive because it says you're not ready to die yet. I need a host. But it's you with the darkness. It's the classic buddy chum, you know. And
apparently, it's like a family curse because I think his grandfather had it when it's a curse placed upon the son of the family. I guess I want to say, I don't know if it's first son. I don't really know, but his grandfather had it when he turned 21, and when he died, it passed on to his father, and his father dies, and I guess when Jackie turned 21, the curse passed on to him. And you go between this like underworld, afterlife, and real world. You bounce back and forth after different events, and to try to control the darkness.
Yeah, and you spend the rest of the game, just kicking ass and chewing gum, trying to kill the guy who your now one motivation is to kill the person who killed your girlfriend. You're going after Paulie. The main gameplay loop of this is you having these powers and having some guns and the combat of it. How did you feel about the combat?
I mean, it's an early generation shooting game, so
yeah, it is. Just admit it's like really bad.
It's rough. It's rough because it's rough. As were most shooters at the time, really early shooters at the time.
It's like got really heavy auto aim on it.
Yeah, and it's just if you try to run and gun, you're gonna have a bad time. There's a certain way you kind of need to play it. Which at first I was trying to do the run and gun thing, and you keep on dying, and you die, or you start a beginning of a kind of, I don't want to say Dark Souls, but it has very much you just restart at a certain checkpoint. It's
got checkpoints, but certainly in the they're not quite as often as you want them to be in the combat. You do like have to go back quite a long way.
But the thing is, the enemy placement is still the same, so you can kind of, if you go to a section, you get killed. You can kind of when you restart, you can kind of go through it a different way.
But I think because, you're touching on something there that like, your health is so low in this game. I thought this was going to be a big power fantasy. You are the darkness. You've got all these powers. You go around. I usually am a chicken when it comes to cover shooters, and I hide behind things and I never move and I wait for each enemy to come like slowly one-on-one to me. And I thought, no, in this game, I'm going to be a brave boy. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to, kick some butt. As soon as you do that, like you can take a very 3 seconds of open fire and you're gone. Like that is not how this game wants you to play it. And I thought that was a bit of a miss. Maybe they're trying to make you use the powers a bit more and think about it more.
I think the point kind of was, at least, especially in the beginning, you just got the powers, so you're very limited. There's a few abilities I think you should have gotten sooner. Like I think the thing with the tentacles can destroy lights. I think that should have been like the first ability you got.
Yeah,
I don't think you did it in this one. But yeah, you had to play it a certain way, otherwise you're gonna get destroyed. Yeah, especially in the beginning. In the beginning of the game, you don't get killed like nothing.
It's tough.
Yeah,
and I think particularly like for a cover-based shooter, there's no cover system for it, so it just ends up being a shooter where you have to just hide back like very far. How did you feel about the? So you've got darkness powers. You've also got underlings, whatever, something that you can summon. I went mainly through the game without using the darklings. You get different ones. You get one that shoots long range, one that does close combat, one that's like a kamikaze, one that goes and explodes itself, and one that like takes out the lights. Did you use these a lot? Did you find them useful?
I used the first two the most. I think the first one was I thought he was long range. I thought he was like melee.
Yeah, he's like melee.
Yeah, I used the melee one. I used the gunner. The kamikaze one never seemed to want to do what I wanted to do. And then the electric one, by the time you got it, it was basically pointless. But I used the gunner and the melee one the most. But yeah, if you're criticizing their lack of usefulness, I think I'll kind of agree on that. That was very much like I said, anything past the gunner, like the kamikaze one, was just completely useless to me. And the electric one, by the time you got it, I didn't need it. So I focused a lot on the gunner and the melee one, the first one you get.
Okay, I mean, one of the things I've written down is Darklings useless, didn't use them. And then when I was researching for the game after I'd played it, I saw a clip of one of the developers playing it and explaining the game, and I realised I'd missed the prompt. I missed the prompt where you can actually direct them.
Yeah, you can direct them.
Yeah, and he was summoning like basically 3 or 4 of them at a time, having them on his person, like around him, and directing them to go into rooms and just clearing out rooms that I would struggle with for quite a long time.
Yeah, I had an issue where like I would try to direct them and then they would just look at me. They didn't want to. I had a problem with the AI. Was he playing? Was he playing the 360 version?
He was.
From what I understand, the 360 version's a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I found them mainly benign.
I was trying to direct him to go into a room, and he just looked at me. So there was times where they were kind of fickle, which is why I didn't use them all that much.
You've got this sort of weird cover-based shooting where you're about as robust as a fortune cookie, and then you've got these sort of darklings that don't sort of do much. What I did find quite fun were the darkness powers themselves. So you can do so. You can like summon a black hole that sort of just takes everything in its sight. You can have the darkness guns, which are quite good, although didn't feel as good as the proper guns. So even though you're kind of prompted to use them because they are unlimited, they just didn't have like the same satisfying feel using them. But nice to have them. You had this sort of tentacle thing that sort of flew out of front. And again, when I was watching this YouTube video, I didn't realize that you could like stab things and stick them on the end of your tentacle. And like, you can get like, grab a car with your, like, with this tentacle and like whirl it around and throw it at enemies. And I had no idea any of that was possible.
I don't know how much it did that. I might be confusing this because I played this in part 2 back to back. And the sequel, the combat is miles better, of course, because it was like, came out 4 or 5 years later after. And I think everything, the whole power fantasy, you get the power fantasy at the very end, at like the tail end of this game, when you get all of your powers, when you finally get all of your powers. And the sequel, I think the sequel handles that a lot better, because from the beginning, you're a powerhouse, but I guess, I mean, it's hard to criticize it when it's like, that sequel came out 5 years later and everything was better 5 years later from the first year of the PS3.
Watch me.
But I mean, like the whole power fantasy thing you wanted doesn't really come until the end, especially that black hole, which I just fucking threw at everything and you just...
Oh my god. All over the place. Why isn't that in every game? Just going back to the story for a minute. I mean, I think and the one point did I genuinely feel engaged with the story or nearly all of the characters. Jackie's cadence is really weird. I mean, the things he's saying are kind of really like half-baked and cliche. He kind of looks like, and it kind of reminds me of the lead actor character from The Room, the sort of yeah, like he's kind of got that weird stiffness. When I found out this game was mocapped, I was like, all right, graphically this game is pretty good, particularly for the time, but the animation of this game, the way the characters move, is weird. It's like stiff, it's awkward, it feels puppety, and I was really surprised to find out that this was actually mocapped.
I think their mistake was not so much a mistake, but they try to go for a more realistic look, and the sequel goes for more of a comic book look.
I genuinely feel like the design was pretty good. I thought the sort of ambitious ideas that the game reached for were really good, but something about the core mechanics, like the actual gameplay, the design, that's not design, the animation and how some of the things were executed were so bad that it brought like the whole thing down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that because I somewhat agree with that. It was very ambitious. Maybe perhaps overly ambitious for the time, because like it was the start of a new generation, and they tried to do a lot of things that wasn't going to happen at the time. Like people just weren't. It was the whole. Like a year later, we got Bioshock that did the whole power trip thing a lot better. But then again, it was later in the generation. Okay, I sent you a picture. That's what Jackie looks like in the sequel. and it's a lot. It looks a lot better.
Yeah, that is a lot better. He just looks really weird. I mean, particularly there's like some cutscenes where he's talking directly to the camera at you, and his eyes are just like going all over the place. And it's like, I don't know, the animation is janky, the mechanics are janky. You were talking last week about how you had no investment in Paige in Beyond Good and Evil.
You gonna say that about Jenny?
Are you kidding me? Like, Jenny literally might as well be a toothpick for the amount of personality they gave her. Like, you literally have you have this one scene where they're together and she's like, oh babe, it's your birthday, I made you a cake. And he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm like a serial contract killer. And they're coming.
First of all, you can choose what you want to say to her. There's certain points we can hit. There's dialogue choices. But we're talking about, that was a very sweet moment in the apartment where, you go to her apartment and you sit down with her you're crazy. I thought the whole apartment scene was very bittersweet. I'm not even joking. You sit down on the couch with her and she falls asleep on your lap while you're watching TV. I thought it was very sweet.
So God help me, I'm posting it on our Twitter, just a clip of that, and like I want to see what people have to say about this, because I mean, it wasn't The Sopranos, was it? It wasn't even like The Magic Roundabout. It was just like, they do not build up this relationship, and when she dies and he's gutted, fair dues to him. I didn't feel any emotional impact for that.
And plus, throughout the game, you learn more about her as well. Like, as the game progresses, you kind of find out more about the relationship.
I tell you who I really did like, which was the aunt.
Yeah. She
was rocking. She is actually like the sort of head, like grandma woman at the head of a mafia, kind of like the Spy. I think
they attack her house and she's pointing at the fucking window.
I wouldn't have this in my day. And just like absolutely gunning a whole like entire family, like mob family down. I thought she was really, really like good, well voiced. But give me the case. Which characters did you love? Why did you love them? What did you love about it?
I mean, like you said that his aunt she was just fucking. She's like, I'm not gonna say do that, but I think you should do that type of thing. She, not in so many words. She
was so good at that. Yeah.
I'm not saying kill your uncle, but he has to be stopped. Maybe you should kill him.
Yeah, that's really good. It did remind me of Tony Soprano's mother on The Sopranos, where she's kind of like running the whole thing in a weird way.
Oh yeah, she's like telling Junior, I'm not saying kill my son, but maybe you should kill my son. That type of thing. Spoilers for The Sopranos, kind of, but not. That was season 1, so obviously Tony Soprano doesn't die in season 1. But yeah, it was definitely all the side characters. You had some of the people a part of the family that you do things for, and the family supports you. Jackie, we have to take him down. He's out of control.
Did you play a lot of the side quests?
I did all the side quests.
You did all of the side quests?
The side quests, there were like 10 side quests. It wasn't that much. I remember the side quests, they didn't really feel like side quests because a lot of it was doing favors for like, the old family or whoever they called themselves.
Yes.
The side characters were a part of the family or members of the family in some way. And a lot of it was like, do this. It was really simple. It didn't really feel like side quests because it felt like things you'd want to do anyway. I mean, there were some silly side quests. One was like some lady drops her brooch or drops something in a train track, so you jump in the train tracks to get them. But I mean, like I said, maybe they weren't side quests. I don't know. It just felt like they were side. Like the one guy was like, "Oh, you need to go do this for me, and I'll help you out." Like it was like small things. They didn't really feel like they didn't. I guess what I'm trying to say is they didn't take very long.
No, I think simple fetch quests.
One of the side quests was actually part of a normal quest you did, so it was like it didn't feel like how like some games are like, oh, collect 50 of these to do this or whatever,
Yeah, and I think, I mean, despite my slight pessimism about like the game as a whole, I think it did implement the side quest quite well. So it is kind of open world-ish in the way that you have different locations that are like...
Yeah, it's very semi, and I like the whole... a lot of time you spend time in the subway, which I think is awesome. It was well implemented because you learn which train to take to which part of the city, and then you see people, you see like some break dancers. There's like one side quest that involves you. There's a guy that's playing like one of those table games with find the ball, and he's cheating, and so the guy tells you do this for me, and I'll show you how to beat him. I think all you get is like unlockable, but then you it's like there's some homeless people walking around.
Yeah, and fair enough. I didn't play any, so I can't criticize. But what I did really like about it is that so like you've got these small. I mean, they have quite small areas, like 4 or 5 streets at a time.
Yeah,
and they're all divided by a subway system. And even though you're kind of on, I did enjoy that this did have a linear path. I think like it's sort of rare and rarer in modern gaming that you just get like a linear game, and I did appreciate that about it. But also, it was full of characters, and you could use this subway to go anywhere throughout the game and explore these things and find these things. So I thought structurally that really worked. It wasn't too daunting. It wasn't like 3 massive maps in like GTA. It's just like maybe 6, 7, 8 locations, all with like different exits to different places.
Yeah, there's like you took like 2 subways to get to like I think one area was like set of 3 of like each area is like each subway system's like 2 or 3 areas. So.
But again, when you're traveling at 0.5 miles an hour, it was really disencouraging to like go and explore these areas. I think we would be remiss not to talk about the sort of main gameplay structure, which is the fact that you have this darkness power, so you have the darklings, your own powers, and also when you are in darkness mode, you sort of get a protective shield and you get a bit more health or a bit more shielding, although that doesn't seem particularly evident. But the main selling point of that is, particularly in the trailers, was that you have to stay in the shadows to replenish your darkness. And this darkness voice is talking to you the whole time. Oh, Jackie, kill, be murderous. This is good. We're doing well. And you had to shoot all of the light sources around the levels to sort of stay in the dark and keep all of these powers, which I thought was a really interesting idea. But by the end of it, I did get a bit sick of like shooting light bulbs. Like I think that kind of slowed the pace of the game.
I mean, you could use the tentacle to when you get that ability, you can use the tentacle to just burst them.
You can, but I mean that's the same thing. It's aiming at them like every 3 seconds. Stop, get a light bulb, move to the next room, get a light bulb.
Again, I think in the sequel it was a lot more. You didn't really have to aim. You kind of just hit the button to break all the lights.
I think that's what it needed. Yeah, it needs to be a quick action button rather than like taking all this time. That really like slows your whole process down, and it slows the pace of the game down. What I really did like about it is thematically you are trying to, so this darkness thing has kept you alive even though you should be dead because it wants to inhabit your body and it needs a host. And your mission, while you still have breath to breathe, is to take revenge on the people who murdered your girlfriend. So you need the darkness. You're using the darkness to get through the game to try and achieve this goal, but the whole time the darkness is trying to use you. So there's this constant conflict between you hate the darkness and it's like controlling you and it's trying to take you over, but at the same time you need it to get through the game and do the things you want to do. And I thought that was really well implemented in the fact that you kind of had to, you as a player, you're literally using the darkness to get through the narrative. Even though it's kind of trying to destroy you from within. So the player experience is like really mirrored by the experience of Jackie and what he's going through. And I thought that was admittedly quite clever.
Yeah, and the darkness is like, I think the story beats, the darkness is trying to manipulate you into you thinking you need it, but at the same time, like the large story point is, plot point is, it needs you too to continue living. So it's kind of like a give and take kind of relationship. Even this time, like I said, I remembered a lot. I remember the main plot beats about the girlfriend and then the ending of the game. But I completely forgot when you brought to this underworld. I was like, I completely forgot that this game just goes completely batshit crazy. Because like when it first happens, you're like, what the fuck is happening? There
are points where you leave like New York, Boston area, and you get put into what feels like a sort of World War One setting.
Yeah, it's like World War One. It's like because I think it's you meet Jackie's grandfather,
Yeah, and all these sort of poor English accents going, "Oh, blimey, governor, you've come just in time, Jackie." And you're there in your mobster voice going, "Hey, what needs to be done?" You know? And they go, "Oh, just go over there into the trenches as well."
Get there, governor. Don't let the darkness consume you.
It will overcome you in the end. I found those bits the least fun to play.
I think the early area, I remember it being like the weakest part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Where you go into like the trenches and everything, and then you have to go in the field and find something. And I remember I had a problem too. And there's another one where you had to find like a beacon or some sort. And if you go, I kind of got looped around too. But yeah, I feel like both good and bad moments of that. Like there's some parts that really well executed, and other parts, like you said, I kind of got lost at what to do.
One bit that was really fun in the other world was the sort of on-rail shooting parts.
Yeah.
Where you're like on a tank and someone's driving it and you're just like blasting through, and it nearly turns into sort of an arcade game from the 90s. And I thought that was like a really just like a bit of breathing space and like a bit of a palate cleanser to what else you'd been playing up until that point.
Yeah, like I said, there were some great moments, and otherwise the other parts was like, I keep on getting lost. So, how the fuck do I do? And then I did something somehow and I figured it out. So yeah, I would say I'm not saying it was all perfect, Jamie. I'm just saying.
Far from it. And I mean, that is worth pointing out. There is no mini map, and in the normal world, you have street maps and you have street names and you have directions, and you just go off and do it. And that felt very organic, although sometimes you would get lost, particularly in the other world where you didn't have this like structure of a city.
Yeah. The first time with the city, you can get lost because you don't know the city. But as you progress, you learn which train to take you where, and it was easier to get around. But yeah, in the other world, in the open bits, we had to like search for things. Like I mentioned like 16 times before, I would get lost. And then like you said, there's other moments where if you don't do what you're supposed to do, it loops you around. And there's one moment where I kept getting looped around. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And I miraculously figured it out somehow.
Yes.
We forgot to mention, I don't know if we want to jump ahead of this. I don't know if we want to bring it up. How you level up is after you kill your enemies, you use your tentacles to rip their hearts out. And then sometimes the hearts fight for the heart. Like you have the two
darkness tentacles. Yeah,
they start like ripping the hearts apart.
And the right one always wins. I mean, some of this felt like it was trying to be quite creative and like really offer the player something, and some parts felt like it was written by a 14-year-old boy.
To certain points, to a certain degree, the sequel is better in that aspect, where it's not as this was very mid-2000 broody. He wasn't like a broody bald guy, but it was a very mid-2000s. It had the whole thing where it was trying to be super edgy. Even I don't think this was really trying to be edgy, but it was a thing at the era where everything was like had to be everything had to be super fucking edgy and shit. But
I really like the TVs that are around. You can find TVs in the subway stations, in houses that you go in, and they're often giving you news reports. There's this one bit where the police are about to ambush you. You're in the middle of this gang fight out going through, and if you turn on the TV in this area you're fighting, you can see a news report showing that the police are there outside about to ambush this building. And if you know that, you can ambush them rather than them ambushing you. But the TV reports really like fleshed out the world, and also you could watch like sometimes if you're in older auntie, whatever her name is, in the older auntie's house. It's got like old mobster films. It's got like a Popeye cartoon, and like literally full versions of these films and cartoons. At the end, it shows you the credits. There's so many licensed properties that it has.
Yeah, because in the beginning of the game, when you go see Jenny, I think To Kill a Mockingbird comes on, and if you really wanted to, you could sit down and watch the entirety of To Kill a Mockingbird,
which would be a much better use of your time.
But yeah, I think, there's like, I remember like, and if you go through the subway, there's this one TV that plays like different music. You hear music on the radios and everything. So it was very, very lively. Yeah,
it was. There were bits of that were really fleshing out this world and making it feel more immersive. I thought the environmental design was really good. I mean, we're getting into a world where 2007, everything's becoming brown and grey. And this is a bit dark. I mean, by definition, it's dark. You're shooting out lights, but it's kind of like when you're in darkness mode, you have like outlines in light of what's around you. I thought that it was quite good.
Yeah, I think all the environments, it felt very lived in, which was the whole point. Like a very lived in, gritty, streets of New York, and corruption, drug. You can like there's some side quests where you fight gangs and everything, and then you can see like sometimes you have like some cops actually trying to kill you that work for your uncle. So it was very I think a very lived in experience, very very dark and gritty.
Yeah, it felt gritty, it felt dark, it felt horrible. Audio wise, I mean, I know it's got like goes in for the heavy tunes, like the heavy sort of metal tunes when you're shooting, and it has sort of more orchestral stuff throughout it. But I think sound design wise, it was like audibly the most offensive game we've played on the podcast. The gunfire rattling. No, not literally like the. I think the mixing was rough at best. The like gun play, like anytime there were guns going off, it like felt horrible. It's the only game my girlfriend's like winced at before she's actually seen it on the screen, because you could just hear all this like battering of guns and this quite like aggressive like bass heavy music like knocking on. Like, you're not supposed to want to live in the world visually, although you enjoy the grittiness of it. Like audibly, I just was like so happy every time I turned that game off. I was popping painkillers left and right. I was trying to play this game because it was just giving me a headache. Did you like the tunage? I
mean, that kind of thing never really bothers me. I mean, but I guess the audio. Like, I guess audio didn't really stand out. Besides, the darkness whispering, go get them, Jackie.
Endgame. Let's talk about. So when you're going towards the end of the game, you're getting up to
Paulie. Yeah, Paulie is hiding. He's hiding like a lighthouse, and you're going up there, and you're up there, and he's like, "You're not gonna get me, Jackie. I'm gonna fucking kill you, Jackie." And you get up there, and then he's a fucking weakling. And I think you shoot him or you hit him or whatever, and he's on the ground. He's like, "Please don't kill me, Jackie." But he goes on and on and on.
Once you've got him on the floor in the White House defenseless, there's this moment where he's going,
we can work together. Come on, Jackie, me and you.
And the darkness is telling you, kill him. This is the right choice. Feed me. And I thought at this point, you get a choice. And you don't. You're just left in that room until you kill Paulie.
And then you kill him. He's like, fuck you, you motherfucker. I'll see you in hell.
And the darkness, all the time, he's been loving all this death. Good, you're killing. It's great. This is good for our relationship. And then, like, it feels like killing Paulie is going to be the tip of the, it's going to be the thing that it's going to be the watershed moment where you're going to be overcome by the darkness. And you kill Paulie and the darkness goes, great. That's fantastic.
You get consumed by something, and then you go to another outer world, and you're in a park sitting, laying on the bench with Jenny. And Jenny's like, she's like, Jackie, they're giving us one last moment together. He's like, I want to stay with you. He's like, I can't.
At one point he goes, you're the best thing in my life you've all ever wanted, and all I ever do is kill you. Like he kills her every day for breakfast. Like
he blames himself for killing her, and she's like, it's not your fault. It wasn't your fault. That's so. And then what she says is, they're giving us one moment together. And he's like, and you have to wake up, and then you wake up, and then a fucking song from the era plays, I guess.
Yeah, and that's roll credits. And
so you didn't like that? You didn't like the end scene at all? I thought the end scene was like one of the most...
No, because the writing was so awful, like, for it. Like, it's so bad.
If you go into YouTube comments for that ending, everyone's like, wow, that was one hell of an ending. I love that ending,
I mean, this was kind of Uncharted, it was just on the cusp of Mass Effect, like, games actually having a good narrative. And not just having a good narrative, having, like, really good writing. And I think... like, the premise of it's fine, the story's fine, the conflict's fine, but the actual, like, line-to-line dialogue is so hammy that I was just like, oh, Jesus.
I thought the ending was very touching. Like, that's one of the most memorable, I think it's one of the things I remember in most of the game. Her getting killed and her saying, you have to wake up now. That's two things I remember most about the game.
We have to cancel the podcast, I'm afraid.
But there was a sequel, came out a couple years later, like 4 or 5 years later, maybe even longer than that. And a lot of the problems that you have with the Jamie gameplay, and I think the story, you may even like the story better too, is is more or less handled. Like the gameplay is a lot more smoother. You don't really control the Darklings. You have a Darkling that follows you and does things like on its own. The gunplay is a lot better. You're better at grabbing things and throwing that at enemies. And you can grab like car doors and use it as shields and stuff like that. And you can grab enemies and throw them at each other.
I think that would really, that would improve it a lot.
I played it. It was fun. I thought it was a good time. It was better than I remember because it ends in a cliffhanger. So I was kind of upset I didn't get a third one. But I thought that overall, a lot of the problems of the gameplay were improved in the sequel. And I think it's might be worth checking out.
So, final thoughts. What would you rate this game out of 10, and would you recommend it?
I mean, I would give it a solid 7. It has its issues. It was definitely a game of its time. The gameplay, gun mechanics for still weren't figured out. A lot of it was very early generation. There were still things from the last generation kind of seeping in that weren't, cleaned up yet. Like, cleaned wasn't the word. That weren't fleshed out yet. But I think I would recommend it. Just be, like I said, just be warned, it's a game of its time, if you go, very early PS3 era, but I think it's a good time.
I'm going to go ahead and say 6 out of 10, which to be honest is more than I thought I was going to give it when I first started playing this game. But you do find things along the way. I mean, it is shooting for like loads of really ambitious things. And I kind of would prefer to play a game that shoots for something and misses than a game that just is happy to be mediocre. I thought there were good ideas mechanically. I thought there were good ideas plot-wise. I just thought they were executed poorly, and that detracted. I think my main issue, I think, at the core gameplay loop and the gunplay being better, I think that's something you can improve upon, and obviously it sounds like that's happening in the sequel. I think the writing feels like someone who has never read a book, but only watched gangster films and tried to imitate it. It's just got that sort of shallow level of understanding of human dialogue or how people naturally speak, and that was coupled with really poor animation of these characters.
I think what you're looking for, the word you're looking for is it's very schlocky. It's a very schlock writing. It's very schlock.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy schlock, so that's probably why I enjoy it as well.
Would I recommend it? Probably not. I thought I was probably going to sell it. I probably will keep it on my shelf. But only to please you, Tony. And I think that is going to conclude our conversation about 2007's PS3, The Darkness.
PS3 masterpiece.
And now for a little section we like to call Game Chasers. As well as slugging through each game we have to play for the podcast, we do have personal gaming lives. And
we have lives outside this podcast, guys.
Barely, but they do exist.
It's there.
Tony, what have you been playing recently?
So, I started playing Disco Elysium, which is like a kind of like a point and click game, but not with kind of RPG elements, but not, you're kind of like a drunken detective who wakes up with amnesia, and you're trying to solve this murder of someone. And, it's a cool little game.
Really stylized, really dark, really great writing. It's the game I was talking about last episode. Very, tabletop RPG, board game elements.
Yes. I went into it because, Jamie recommended it. He's like, Tony, this sounds like something. This is probably something you'd really like. I thought it was going to be like a SRPG kind of like the... Because the way it is it kind of over the top, kind of like a isometric, kind of like the first 2 Fallout games. So it's it's kind of like a strategy RPG kind of type thing with turn-based kind of like Fallout, some combat. Because you have choices. In the beginning, in the hotel room you wake up in, and then you can fill out them, and it doesn't really matter because it's just kind of like showing you can redo some of them. So I was like, okay, and it's like. Even some of the dialogues like that, you can say, you can really put your foot in your mouth, and And I was like, okay, there's going to be some combat. There's no combat. It's a strip. It's just the entire game is like this, Gain your experiences. You could have 80% in a certain one aspect in a conversation, and you can still fail it. Very rolling the dice. But yeah, it's been kind of it's been a blast. It's a very atmospheric, very strange at times.
Weird, but great writing.
You have this inner monologue that's just of your different consciences, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what are you talking about now? He starts talking about random shit sometimes. You have your sidekick, Kim Kitsuragi. I might be butchering that, but yeah, he's very exact opposite of you. He's very mellow. He's not a dirty cop, but he understands that sometimes you have to kind of bend things. You know, he's very nonchalant about certain things. Fucking fantastic companion character. I love just some of the things he says to you, the way he responds to you. Just some of his dialogue is just excellent. One of my favorite gaming characters of the past decade. I love his character.
Wow.
Yeah, I love his character. He's easily one of my favorites. In a very long time. So I've been playing that. But I kind of put a pin in it at the moment because I'm trying to want to go back and finish games I've started. There's just so many games where I'm halfway through them, and I just want to go back and complete them. And so I decided to go back and play The Last of Us 2 because someone on our Twitter had mentioned they started playing it. And I was like, shit, that's right. I started that. So I started playing that.
So did you go back to your previous save and start from there, or did you start the whole game again?
I was going to mention that. Jamie was like, how can you go back and play when
I always have to go back to the beginning, yeah.
I mean, with The Last of Us Part 2, I started playing it mid last year. I started playing it. So I played it a couple months ago. Fairly recently, so I remember all the major story plots, and then it kind of goes back to those kind of touches back on some things anyway. So whatever I forgot was kind of caught me up at certain points in the story. But yeah, so I'm thinking, and I was telling Jamie, this game is long. It's very linear, but it's very long. This game can take you between 25 to 30 hours.
Is it too long? I mean, for a game of that ilk, you kind of want to be hoping for 20 hours plus. I don't know why every game feels like it has to be 25, 30 hours nowadays.
You can, maybe if you rush through it, you can get through it a lot quicker. But I was telling you before, Jamie, that I thought I was halfway through the game because my time was 11 or 12 hours in. I'm okay. I'm almost through the game. I'm not the end of the game because The Last of Us was about that long, about 15 hours or so. Yeah. And then I check where I am, and it's I look at it, and I was a quarter through the game. Mm-hmm. I was like, shit, and shit. I was like, fuck. And I thought it was,
It's like when you're watching a show on Netflix, a movie on Netflix, and you go, and you stop to go to the toilet or something, and you go, I must be halfway through this, and you're one third,
a 4-hour movie.
You're an eighth of the way through it. You think, does this need to be that long?
I mean, you haven't played it yet, so I don't really want to go into details.
Highly controversial for the story. A lot of people said there were twists and there were character decisions that they did not chime. I mean, very well received, certainly critically, but a lot of people rebelled. I mean, were sending death threats to the publishers about this game. I think there were people who played through the game who just said, I really enjoyed the game, but there were some character developments and storylines that I would have probably done differently or seemed out of place.
I agree with certain parts of that. I really enjoyed the game. It just didn't hit that landing that the first one did towards the end.
Which was huge.
There's some fantastic set pieces towards the end. There's one set piece towards the very end. It was just, you're escaping this village, and it was just so well done. Because there's certain points in the game where there's 3 different factions. There's there's the Scars, and there's the other side of the perspective. Because you play as 2 different characters. You see 2 different perspectives. And there's one point where I was running through this. I was Ellie and whoever was with her at the time, and I was running. I think it was Ellie, but I was running through this train station, and there were these human enemies, and there were these clickers. And it was me, and I had a decision: either I could try to fight my way through, or I could, I was like, "Fuck! I have to fight all these guys, just all these fucking, just the clickers and everything." So what I did was, I took a piece of, I took a bottle or a brick, and I threw it in the direction of the enemy of the human enemies, and you had all the clickers just running towards them, while I just
That's
fucking.
Fantastic.
There's a few moments in the game that are like that.
That's so well designed that you can think yourself way out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another part where you have two different factions fighting each other, and you could either try to fight them or you could try to sneak around them. And I just kind of gunned it through the part. It's decisions like that. I loved it. Mm. But the pacing, man, it's a little long in the tooth. I felt like there was some, fat that they could trim some fat off. I have no problems with the characters. the new characters they introduced. I had none of that. I have no problem with that. I thought the development, like I said, you see things from different perspectives. I thought that was cool. I really liked how it jumped back and forth between certain things, and it goes, there's like time jumps and everything. I thought it was really well done. There were certain things that when you finally play it, Jamie, we can talk about that I didn't like.
Can you pace a 30-hour game well, or is that just too... I mean, unless it's an RPG, which is a very different beast, like, are you ever going to get that right?
I mean, you can do a 30-hour game, narrative and everything, but it just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like there's certain things that could have been, maybe certain moments that could have been shorter, maybe less backtracking. There's some prompts where you have to backtrack back and forth. Maybe they could have been something they could have, or maybe they just switch things around. I don't know. Like, I'm not a game developer. I'm not a story writer.
Shocking.
I'm a complete amateur, not really criticizing the game. I'm pretty sure there are people like, what the fuck is he talking about? The game was perfect. But I think there's certain things they could have, some of the pacing kind of fell off. And like you said, like you said, there were certain moments where certain characters made decisions that didn't really make sense, or certain scenes that played out that didn't make sense. Narratively, I think it just seemed kind of off, but I still enjoyed it. There's certain parts in the game towards the end, I thought the game was over. The game was going to end, or it was the final scene, or it was about to end. And then it cut to another scene.
It did a Lords of the Rings 3 on you.
Then I was like, okay, so more things happen. I was like, okay, so there's one point where it was like 1 in the morning. It was like 12:30 or 1 in the morning. I'm like, okay, I'll finish. I'm like, it's probably like another hour left. I'll finish in the morning. Then I wake up in the morning, and this was yesterday, and I was going on, and it was like 4 hours later, I was done with the game. I was like, there was certain points I thought it was going to end, and just kept on going. And like, I enjoyed the game, but sometimes you get to that point where you're like, can you just end?
I really think there's an art to brevity, and I think editing has become such a unvalued skill in everything, in movies, in games. It's like people just seem to bloat things out now, and I love the sort of compact 15-hour. If it's a linear narrative, give me 15 hours of something really good rather than 25 hours of something that feels a bit bloated.
I mean, I understand why they did that, because there is a lot of story, but I don't know, some of the pacing, man.
It looks amazing. It looks better than most PS5 games.
It's fantastic. It's the gunplay, the combat, the gunplay, fantastic. The character development, great for the most part. Like I said, whatever. Story beats, there's some, like I said, pacing could have been better. I was happy when it ended. I enjoyed the game. I was kind of happy when it ended. But would I recommend it? Yes. If you played the first one, play this. To listen to what the criticisms. If you heard some of the criticisms, a lot of times it's from people who didn't play it. They're just mimicking what the people said. Pretty much. But yeah, I would recommend it. If you enjoyed the first game, but it just didn't. To me, it just didn't stick. It didn't nail that landing like the first one did.
Good to know. I have been playing something that's probably tonally the absolute other end of the spectrum, but nonetheless a PlayStation exclusive in the same breath of The Last of Us 2, and that is Insomniac Spider-Man. What can I say about Spider-Man that hasn't already been said? Probably nothing, but like a fun game from beginning to end. If you have a PlayStation and you haven't played Spider-Man yet, just play it. It is just worth your time. Insomniac have really worked something out from like day one. They worked out in Spyro, they worked out in Ratchet and Clank, and that is that like they know how to make movement in a game fun. It's like the gamification of just movement. Moving around as Spyro in Spyro's world is a fun thing to do. Moving around in Sunset Overdrive, which is in many ways like a precursor to Spider-Man, with all this sort of parkour, like exploring environment, is just fun to do. And I know it's been said before, but swinging in Spider-Man is just fun to do. The music is fantastic. The way it's mixed when you start swinging, when you go off of it. The story was okay. It was like maybe a solid 7 out of 10. It wasn't like incredible, but it did have its moments. I think the one thing that really broke it up for me is because I really enjoyed this world. Have you played Spider-Man, Tony?
I have it. It's another game I want to go back to complete.
For shame.
But I got good ways into it.
What I found was, because I was actually enjoying it so much, I did do what I don't do often, which is just like, I want to just like do all the side missions and I want to get all the collectibles.
Yes, I was the same way.
that nearly made me burn out. There were certain, twice I had to take like a couple of weeks break from this game. What it also did was just break up the narrative for me in a way that is weird, and like you end up dictating the pacing of a game by going off and doing all these other side bits. And sometimes I just yearn for like that more directed, Uncharted sort of feeling where like this is the plot. And I feel like it's a hard dilemma because Spider-Man works because of its open world, because of all the sort of fun things you can do, but also that does detract from like
you crave structure.
Yeah, and like that's a player's decision, isn't it? You can mainline it, but you might not get as many powers and stuff, or you can go around and do all these little bits, but that does diffuse the story. Ending games, narratively, gameplay-wise, is really difficult to do. It did it, yes. Particularly gameplay-wise, it did it fantastic. You're taking on, there's loads of bosses, there's loads of really big characters from the comic books and movies that all come out at the end, and you're facing them, and it's just like the best gameplay. You're playing it in the sky. I didn't really get on with the Batman series because of the combat, but in this, it's less like remembering 15 combinations of buttons to like get the right sort of combo structure.
I think this has a similar combat system to Arkham, doesn't it? Like you have to press like
it doesn't like it's more boiled down. Like a lot of it, like square is your attack button and triangle is your web button, and R1 is your gadgets. So it's not like square, triangle, X, up, down, forward. You know, it's not got that sort of nearly like fighter thing. But what it replaces with that is like all of the fights are kinetic. You've got to keep movement. If you're staying around in one place and doing combos, you're still going to get murked. You've got to be like quick, moving around, swinging, using the environment. And that's where the sort of slightly deeper gameplay comes in. And I really enjoyed it for that. I really enjoyed it because I didn't have to sort of take a memory test and learn at like 8 level. I'd love to be good at Tekken, but you know, who's got the time? And I just really enjoyed it. Like, go out and play it.
Did you play the DLC?
I haven't played the DLC. That's a little tasty treat that I'm leaving on the shelf just for a moment. Yeah, I'm just excited to see what they do with Wolverine, what they do with Spider-Man 2. Just like a company firing on all cylinders at the moment, and yeah, a few years late, but still a very happy customer.
But yeah, I agree with you with having to take breaks because I mentioned a few episodes back I was playing Ghost of Tsushima and I kind of took a break from that for a little bit. I started up again, but
open world fatigue, isn't it?
I think I was just doing. I think we kind of had to rush a few games at that one point. With like it was right before Christmas, I think, and we kind of had to like rush through some. I think we had like Beyond Good and Evil in the Darkness. I kind of had to play those back to back.
And one of those was good.
Yes, the Darkness. But I get what you're saying. Like I'm still like very early in Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm just exploring everything because it's just fun to explore. You know, it's a beautiful game.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
You do feel like you owe it to yourself to play those big PlayStation exclusives, and if you haven't, you're out of the conversation. But with Spider-Man, I definitely think that is justified. Do go and play it.
Yeah, I'm not even a big Spider-Man fan, and I really enjoy the Spider-Man game.
But you don't have to be a Spider-Man fan to enjoy this game. It's just like gaming bliss, and a company that's so that's like one of the only companies that reports no crunch, which is just like absolutely fantastic. So I think that's going to be everything for this episode, which only leaves us to tell you where you can find us, Tony.
All right, guys. As always, if you've enjoyed our company, you can follow us on Twitter at PSRumble. And if you really like us, you can drop us an email for your questions, comments, complaints, what have you, at PlayStation Rumble Podcast at gmail.com. There's also YouTube, which is kind of there, and hopefully soon we'll start up a Twitch account so you guys can watch us be really bad at video games. Thank you for joining us. Hope you had a good time.
So we will be returning on the 15th of March with the PS2 classic Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, and that only leaves us to say goodbye.
Farewell.
Goodbye. So we will be returning on the 15th of March with the PS2 classic Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Until then, goodbye.
What the fuck was that?
So we'll be returning. So our neck. Fuck you, T. Fuck you. I'm trying my best here. I'm putting my heart and soul into this. It's better than the writing in fucking the darkness.
Are you drunk?
Yes, I'm drunk. Leave me alone. I've done well. I do well to just breathe in and out every day. Okay. So